aim to motivate and inspire viewers to enjoy the clothes they wear as an expression of their personality and their beliefs. This is the Slow Wardrobe. Come and have a look. Hello, welcome to episode 83 of the Slow Wardrobe podcast. My name is Linda and I'm your host. Bit of a slow faltering start. It's been a day of slow faltering starts so far. I'm recording this podcast so much later than I normally do. Plus on the day that it's published, which I also try to avoid for obvious reasons. But here we go. This is an episode with a bit of a twist. Rather than presenting lots of news, I am for the first time going to do a bit of a review of 2022. I'm going to revisit everything I've knitted. A selection of it is there. That's not all of it because one of them is in the window. Two of them are my husband's and I didn't have the time to dig them out, etc, etc. So it's an incomplete list, but the samples that I don't have here, I'll be able to show photographs of. And then I'll do something very similar for Layercake. So again, bit of a review of 2022, what's gone on in Layercake, and a little bit of looking forward in this episode as well. It's like what's on my needles next and things like that. So without further ado, let's get stuck into knitting and crochet and then a separate section for Layercake. Here we go. Yes, so 2022 knits. First one to start with, well, of course, it's only the second week of December now. So if I look back for a whole year, then I can sneak in a little bit of December of last year, can't I? So I can show you a couple of projects that I was knitting on at the back end of last year that I haven't got the live samples of with me, but I'll show you photographs. And the first one was a jumper that I started knitting for myself. It was a design by Jackie Bogg. It's called October. I've got a cheat sheet for once. I can normally avoid that, but I've got a cheat sheet so that I don't have to keep stopping and starting the video to double check what I'm saying. Hopefully this is going to be an episode without 100,000 different sections in it, but we'll see how we go. So October by Jackie Bogg, a jumper that is not as long as it looks in this photograph. This is my husband wearing the October jumper. The jumper has great proportions, but absolutely doesn't suit me. The shape and the proportions don't work on my body. It's kind of long and straight now, and long and straight doesn't work well. I'm too curvy for that, too hippie for that. So the colors didn't love me either. I absolutely adore all the Fair Isle in it, but it just didn't work for me. So I tried it on my husband and he absolutely adores it. I love it on him. I think it looks great. So I had a very happy customer, and I was one personal Fair Isle project down, which I was really been looking forward to, but I made up for it later in the year. So halfway down the stack, I have a Fair Isle win to show you. Still, so this was all into December and the first days of January where I finished the October and passed it on. The only other one to show you that was also December in time for Christmas that I don't think I've shown it to you before. I don't remember showing a photograph of it here is a mistletoe garland, which is a free pattern from Loop London, knitted in linen, 100% linen yarn. The linen I got from Loop years ago and hadn't gotten around to actually creating the garland, and last Christmas I finally did. I love it. Of course, it's going to be used every Christmas now, so that was another project right at the back end of 2021. So moving into 2022 and the first proper January project, which was another jumper for a husband. I had already planned that jumper, and of course with the October having been meant to be for me, he was going to get the next project, and that is the halibut sweater by Caitlin Hunter. Photograph of it here, and that came out beautifully. I love it, he loves it. I know it's not shown on him here. It's a project that I could wear as well, but again, you know, it really is knitted to his proportions. So longer, he's 6'2", so longer sleeves, longer body, etc. I will show you the different yarns, etc., and I'll show you the names of the people that I'm quoting as well in the down bar. If there's anything that you're interested in, you will be able to find the yarns and use the same ones. So moving on, next was a project that I knitted to celebrate a new linen that I was introducing early on in the year, the large purple check linen. More of that, of course, in the Layercake section. But what I did was create a kit and an adaptation of an existing pattern, being the Fairly shawl, to create a variant of the Fairly shawl, which has got colors on one side that are all chosen from the large purple check linen fabric, and instead of having the little eyelets that are part of that design kind of blending in, when I'm changing color, I highlighted them with an accent color. This is one of the accent colors from the fabric as well. But this is a knit with a twist because it's got two sides to it. It's completely double fabric, and you knit it the same way as you would knit a Fairly, and then instead of casting off, you're going to effectively ultimately fold the fabric, but rather than casting off at the end of the bottom, because you start here at the top, you go down, and that last row of eyelets, that last line of eyelets, is going to turn into a picot edge. You then, with all of this on the needles, turn around and you decrease the stitches. So all of this would be on your needles, and you decrease the stitches for the other side. And what you do on the other side is just have a set number of rows in each color. You keep alternating the same colors that were on the other side, except for that accent color. So you've got a stripy shawl on one side and a shawl with eyelets on the other. And of course, then you have to graft them together. This top edge then gets grafted with the two sides of the triangle coming together. So the idea behind this was that, of course, apart from celebrating the colors that are in the linen fabric, is that by creating two very airy, loose, poofy, open knits and folding them together like they have been here, first of all, you get a really nice feel. The whole thing becomes a little bit more substantial, if you like, but it also traps the air. And what happens with linen knits like this in general is they're really nice and warm without being as insulating as wool is. So if you find it quite warm and quite restricting to wear a lot of wool around your neck, especially inside, then knitting a shawl either like this or a really, really big one that you can wind around your neck multiple times out of linen is a really nice alternative. It won't be as warm, it won't be as insulating, but it's still really nice and cozy. So that was the idea behind this project, and kits and patterns, etc. available on the website. So it was a pattern not for a selfish knit, but for the business. After Double Dutch, I was back into a selfish knit. I had found the last color that I'd been looking for of the yarns that I wanted to use to knit a shifty. pattern by Drea Renee Knits, very popular pattern, and done in the Spin Cycle yarns. And Fig Tree Yarns had done a colorway that was exclusive to them, that together with the Spin Cycle colorways I had picked up in the past already, created just the right kind of color blends and color mixtures that I was looking for. So here's my shifty. Have I worn it? Nope, I haven't. And I think it's for two reasons. First of all, the time of year that I knitted in, because of course we were moving into spring and the temperature was going up, and this is a woolly jumper with a lot of texture, so it's a warm knit, and it's quite fitted. It's quite cropped and fitted, and in my case, moving into springtime, that's not the right time for me to wear something like this. Now would be the right time, and I kind of forgotten about it, to be honest, because I've knitted so much more and I'm so much future focused in my knits and my ideas, because of course we're always into designs for the future, colors of the future, with the work here at the studio and for Layercake. So I'm going to finally take this home, because it's been living here at the studio, and wear it with some of my Layercakes. I should have photographs forthcoming on Instagram if I'm successful, so bear with me. But hopefully I'll finally be wearing my shifty this winter. So that is the shifty, and we're still in springtime. And what I wanted to do was introduce a second colorway for the Yarnadelic poncho kit that I sell. And we were going to go to Wonderwool. It was the first show again since all the pandemic cancellations of shows for the last couple of years. So I wanted to have a second colorway for the Yarnadelic poncho. So moving on from the shifty, my next knit was a second Yarnadelic poncho. The first one, actually I can show you a photograph of both of them here together, but I will also start creating a stack of ones that I've shown you. I'll also put the sample on the lady here, and I'll put that sample inside out to show you how with this poncho I manage all the ends. This is a choice. Of course, you can weave them in. You can actually knit them in as you go, because you're going to felt the poncho afterwards, and any ends will blend in beautifully if you have sewn them in or knitted them in. But what I did here is the old trick of keeping your ends about 4 inches or so when you cut them and you change color, and then all those ends you end up twisting them together, and then of course they get felted just like the rest of the poncho gets felted, so they don't undo themselves, they stay perfectly in place. And I really like this effect. As you can see, the point where you change color very slowly changes and like runs a stitch over every time you change color. That is on purpose. That is to make sure that you don't see the jog. You have a jogless jog as much as possible. And I'll show you that on the outside, because it actually works really well. So the poncho gets knitted first and then gets felted. Now felting, if you are in America and you have a top-loading washing machine, is a really easy process to do in the washing machine, because with a top loader you can open up the machine in the middle of a washing cycle and check what's going on. Of course, in Europe we mostly have front loading washing machines, which you can't open up in the middle of a wash cycle. So the result, or the solution, which I came up with, and I have no idea whether this was already an existing solution or not, but it works a dream, is to felt in the dryer. Because what felts is the combination of moisture being present and movement. It's the movement that felts the wool. So you end up dampening your project, putting it in the dryer, stick the dryer on, and the felting starts. And it takes a fair amount of time to achieve the level of felting that you're after. So it's not like 5 minutes in and your project is completely felted. We're talking more about half an hour, 40 minutes in total. And you can open the dryer as often as you want to kind of reshape and make sure that you're happy with how it's going. I have found so far with all the projects that I've felted in the dryer that the drying or the felting process is very evenly, so you don't end up with sections that are more or less felted. It works really well. So meanwhile, I have here the jog line of the poncho. I don't know whether it's visible. If not, then great, because that's the idea. But this is where the line of twisted ends runs on the inside. And as you can see, it is either not or barely visible on the outside. Calling this the outside, but like I said, you could wear this the other way around as well to great effect. The people that have knitted this poncho so far have all come back to me and said, my goodness, I don't ever get as many compliments on any of my hand knits as I do with this poncho, which feels a little bit like cheating because it is so easy. It is knitted in the round. You knit it from the top down. So it's a little bit like wearing, knitting a yoked jumper. You knit it top down. It's just stocking stitch. You change colors every so many rows, so that color change holds some interest, it keeps you going, and yeah, I recommend it. But I also liked it enough to actually knit a second sample. Yarnadelic poncho, second sample. My next knit was another knit for myself in my beloved Biche et Bûche Le Petit Lamb's wool. I stumbled across this design by Tomomi Yashimoto, obviously a Japanese designer, and I knitted this jumper in a size and in proportions that I absolutely adore. I think out of everything that I've knitted this year, this is probably my all-out favorite. And it's the kind of proportions of it, the looseness of it, the length. I have knitted an extra section of short rows. Let me try and show this to you. As you can see, this distance in the front between the end of the yoke and the start of the bottom section is smaller in the front and bigger in the back. It's because there's a wedge of short rows in the back that drops the back down, as you can see. And I've done a nice wide ribbed edge, same with the rib on the sleeves. And I really pressed out the rib on both the jumper and the sleeve, so you get that beautiful A-line going. And yeah, absolutely love it. This is Cumulus, this fiber space Cumulus, this contrast, but the rest is a Biche et Bûche Le Petit Lamb's wool color. I knitted this jumper what feels in like no time. It didn't take me very long at all to finish it, which was partially because I was so motivated to finish and wear it. I knew it was going to be a winner, and yeah, I absolutely love it. So, highly recommended. It's not a pattern I sell, it's not yarn I sell, but if you want to have a go, I don't think you'll regret it. Lovely pattern and really nice result. That kind of open neckline, it's another thing that I really like, because I can then wear other things underneath it. If I get too chilly, I wear a big shawl around my neck. So love my Milky Way. On to next selfish knit. We are not in summer yet. I remember taking my next knit with me when I went on a holiday in May. moving this out of the way, and this is my other fave knit from this year. It was the first time ever that I steeked. This is called the Judith cardigan by Jackie Bogg, knitted in her hot butter yarns. So same designer and same yarns as the October that I knitted right at the end of last year. And woohoo! I now have my own Fair Isle project that I'm happy with. I love it. As you can see, all the floats are really short in this jumper, so I think it's a really good example of a Fair Isle project that would be suitable for people who haven't done a lot of Fair Isle yet. The motifs are relatively small, simple, so they're very easy to memorize. It's very easy to recognize and see where you are in your knitting. I really enjoyed knitting this. Super easy for me, and therefore meditative and like relaxing, and yeah, I liked everything about it. So a little bit of a repeat of the past to remind you what I did exactly in terms of the closure of this, because you can see that all the buttons have a different size, but the buttonholes all have a very similar size. They all have a bit of accent color around them to kind of mirror the button on the other half of the cardigan, because I very often wear this open, but I do have the option of closing it, and that is done by sewing a small button behind the big button. The big button is literally just tied on with some wool, which means that I can untie it and take it off if I ever want to wash this and I'm worried about these precious little ceramic buttons. Then I can take that off. I can take the big button off, and it's got a small button in the back, in this case in the shape of a tiny little pencil. I just had those and they work really well. So then what you do is, it's like an inside out button and buttonhole. You end up buttoning the button that's in the back onto the buttonhole that's on the other side of your cardigan. So you end up with a buttoned cardigan with tiny little buttonholes, so they won't stretch and your buttons won't pop out. It works really well. It's all kind of tight and nicely sized, but it looks on the front as if you've buttoned it with big buttons. So recommended trick. It's a trick that I came across years and years ago, and I've been using it ever since, and I passed it on the podcast when I was reminded of it and used it for this particular knit. But if you didn't watch that particular episode, here's a tip for you. Really useful to avoid big buttonholes and to make it easy to remove precious buttons from garments that you may want to wash. This has never been washed. I doubt if I ever will. I won't be wearing this directly on my skin, so if it ever needs airing out, then that's what I do, and I may do spot cleaning when I need it, but I'm not very big on washing my my wool garments, not if they're thick ones like this. If they're really thin, like the Milky Way jumper is much thinner, I might be more tempted to wear that directly on my skin, and then of course I will give that a wash every now and then. So far the Judith. We're moving towards summer, and I bought a second ever skein of a very precious cashmere yarn by Art Yarns. It's the Cashmere Ombre 2-ply by Art Yarns, and they are very pricey skeins, but you get 150 grams of yarn and more than 600 meters. I think it's like 675 yards or something like that in one skein. And the reason I bought it is that I had last year knitted a pressed flower shawl in linen and biche et bûche le petit lamb's wool. Linen for the little flowers and the little nubs, and then the biche et bûche for the rest of the fabric. And it jumped out to me that when you knit like that, the fabric and the feel of the fabric is really dominated by your all over color, not by the accent color that you use for your flowers. That's just how the mosaic knitting that you do, that's what it's called, the knitting like this, is with it's a form of slip stitch knitting. Then the what comes to the fore, because you do a combination of knit and purl stitches, what comes to the fore are the purl stitches, which are in your main color. So I loved the idea of using the crispness of the linen together with the softness and the flowiness of the cashmere, and end up with a big shawl where the cashmere ends up dominating in terms of feel, but in terms of the way it holds itself and shaping is really strongly influenced by the sturdiness of the linen that's in it. And I was not disappointed. I love it. I've been wearing it, and it's got wonderful shape holding properties because of that linen. It doesn't collapse when you put it around your neck. You can really push it up onto your ears and beyond. So it's a really interesting combination of very, very different yarns to achieve quite a good result. It's a lovely flat knit that really holds its shape, and it doesn't change and crunkle up, which you would be more worried for the cashmere to do, because it's so soft and it's so flowy, but the linen ends up holding it nice and straight. So that was my into summer knit, and colors, I mean, come on, love them. On to the next one, which was my Mare shawl. And it was really a follow-on from the fact that I had just knitted that pressed flower shawl. I was so taken with that combination of the cashmere and the linen that I bought another skein of the cashmere ombre 2-ply, the Art Yarns 2-ply. And I was looking for another project where I could play with the way the yarns show on top of each other. Like I said, the flowers kind of regress like below the purl stitches that surround them in the pressed flower shawl. And now I wanted to try and find a pattern where the linen would kind of sit on top of the wool behind it. So the Mare shawl, which is a pattern by Natasha Hornsby, she's based in the Netherlands, uses that same slip stitch effect, the mosaic knitting, and I'll show a photograph of her original sample. And what is knitted in the light colors in this sample is what I chose for my linen. And because the colors in my Mare shawl are so very, very subtle, I'll show the resulting shawl here. I'm showing a picture because I've actually pinned it in my window as part of my Christmas display. So it's too much of a hassle to try and get it out. So here's a photograph of it. They're very, very iced pastel colors in this particular cashmere. So to ensure that the linen wasn't going to dominate the colors in those icy pastels, I chose white linen for the color that is the light color in the original sample. And what I really love in the result is that the whole thing is quite subtle, but when you are seeing it up close, it looks like those little flower shaped sections are almost they almost look like lace, like they look like bobbin lace that has been sewn on top of a knit. So that combination is exactly the kind of effect that I was after, so I'm thrilled with it. It's also a really large shawl, and again the linen is doing a great job at keeping its shape, so it's a really nice shawl to wear multiple times around you. Again, can't recommend it enough. The combination of linen and a floppy a drapey yarn to complement each other works really well. If you are contemplating a project like that and you're not sure or whatever, always feel free to drop me a line. I'm very happy to give you my opinion and give you advice as to which kind of yarns combine better than others. And they don't obviously all have to be yarns that you buy from me. I'm always happy to give advice on project ideas and project struggles. So that was the Mara shawl. Next, another jumper came across my Instagram feed of Tomomi again, Tomomi Yoshimoto. This time, the Howling of Wolves jumper. I immediately wanted to knit it. I think I'll knit everything and anything that Tomomi designs. I really love her designs. I think they're very creative. I love the dimensions, and here it is. Am I doing a decent job? Yeah, that looks all right. So, Howling of Wolves. I had a couple of hanks of Biche et Bûche Le Cashmere and lamb's wool. Same running length as Le Petit lamb's wool, but with some cashmere in it. So I bought some more of that same color, in this case a very dark grey. My Milky Way was a dark blue, this is a dark grey. And then I was looking for a couple of colors to combine it with. And I really liked the choices of the original colors because it looks like very icy, kind of wintry motifs in this jumper, combined with these kind of leaf or flower tree shapes. So I wanted to not lose that effect, and I found two colors. I think this color is called Candy, and this is turquoise, I think. I'll check and put the correct names down here. And Candy is icy pastels. I obviously had the icy pastels on the brain still from the Mara shawl that I had knitted. And from a distance, this almost looks like an undyed linen color. This jumper goes extremely well with the color of undyed linen. And that is because of the color impression that this color gives from a distance. When you look up close though, the light turquoise in this pale blue color is very clearly present, and they really kind of boost each other's presence in the knit. But from a distance, you get that really, icy kind of effect, that really cool effect of wintry colors. So absolutely love it. Very happy with this neckline. As you can see, the original actually has a bit more of a poofy sleeve. I didn't want a poofy sleeve. I wanted to replicate the sleeve that I had in my Milky Way, and I have therefore made the cuff even longer than in the original pattern, and I've pressed it out again like I did in the Milky Way, rather than having a bit more of a balloon shaped sleeve. And rather than putting a section of short rows in between my motifs, I just knitted it all the same as the pattern states, and then I put a section of short rows below the motifs before then going on to my ribbing. So it's again a jumper that is slightly shorter in the front, slightly lower in the back, a little bit less accentuated than in my Milky Way. This one is also slightly shorter, as are the sleeves. I'm not 100% yet whether I'm going to leave the sleeves like that or whether I want them a little bit longer still. And if I am going to lengthen them, I will open them up here and knit an extra section and then graft them back together rather than make the cuffs even longer. But at the moment, I'm enjoying wearing it as is. It's just a regular sleeve length on me rather than long, which is what the Milky Way is. They really go over the top of my hands. And maybe it's quite good that they are not exactly the same shape and size. So I may leave well alone because it's very wearable, and I have already enjoyed wearing this, getting lots of compliments. Haven't worn it yet with undyed linen, but I will. So that's coming up, and again, I'll put some pictures on my Instagram feed if I end up managing that. But so far so good. My Howling of Wolves jumper, it looks like an A-line shape because of the way I've pressed it, but there are no increases beyond the bottom of the yoke. This is just going straight down, and that only modification was in the back with the short rows. So moving on, I then was introduced to linen that was presented to me by a lady who does a lot of weaving here in the village. It was dead stock linen from a linen mill in Ireland that has long closed, and I've turned it into a long-term project to think of ways in which this very thin linen weaving yarn can be used by crafters like us. So I've talked already about the idea of embroidering with it on a different project, and just see previous episodes for what I've done so far, and I'm doing more at the moment. See future episodes for that. But the point of talking about the linen project is that the lady who visited to introduce me to this yarns was wearing a little Wayu bag that was given to her by a friend from Colombia. And Wayu bags are originally from Colombia, and I had a look all over it. It was crocheted. It was just a little crossbody bag that she had in this beautiful dark teal color. I loved it, and I was immediately motivated to create my own version of a Wayu bag using my own 3-ply Layercake linen. So this is the first sample that I crocheted for myself and made into a little bag. I actually use it, so I've got things in it that I forgot to take out. Oh, there we are. So the idea with this is to wear it as a crossbody bag. As you can see, it's got a strap and some hardware from a little bag that had recently died, little leather bag that I had, and I had saved the strap. So I used the hardware to attach to my little crocheted bag. Crocheted on 2mm needle, then lined in Layercake linen. Oh, it did have other bits in it. Lined in Layercake linen. It's got a lot of dust in it as well. It is properly being used on a day-by-day basis. Magpie stripe in this case, little pocket that is big enough to hold a passport or other little bits and pieces. But the most important point is that this bag has got the right size to carry a big phone. Can't show you the big phone because I'm recording with it. But so it's completely lined and has a very strong magnet. The reason the magnet is so strong is that it still works when you use the bag inside out, and the magnet will close through your layers of crocheted linen. So the whole thing can be worn like this as well. So the idea behind this right from the start was to create little kits. It's an incredibly easy crochet. It's just double crochets all the way around. Super easy. You make a flat base and then you start crocheting around, and you very slightly decrease towards the top to create a very pleasing shape. And that's all there is to it. So after this one, of course, I started to play with color. This is the cottage garden colorway of my linen gradient sets. Big set here, and of course now also tiny sets to do one of these with. And these sets come with the fabric to line your bag with the strong magnets, and with hardware and a strap. So you can really create a complete bag. You can make the strap longer or shorter, of course, as you like. And again, this is one that can be used inside out. You get enough fabric to do a lining, as well as a little pouch pocket on the inside, so you can wear your bag inside out. And there are choices of color combinations on the website. So there's 5 or 6 different lining colors to choose from, and 10 different colorways for the outside. So this was another project for the business, even though it's crochet rather than knitting. So we're hitting autumn time properly by now. And the next project that I embarked on was the West Knits Mystery Knit Along. Here we go. Jumper off. Every year, of course, there is a West Knits Mystery Knit Along that runs through October. And for a couple of years already, I've been either participating or asked for somebody else to participate on my behalf using finer yarns. All of Stephen's patterns most of Stephen's patterns tend to result in very large shawls, schlankets he refers to them as sometimes, I think. He's a big guy, he can really wear very large shawls with aplomb. But a lot of my customers definitely feel that the really large shawls drown them and are just too much to wear. So using a finer yarn and using smaller needles results in a shrinkage of the whole project down. So this year, for the first time, I knitted my West Knits Mystery Knit Along using only my linen yarn. And instead of a 3.5mm needle, I used 2.75mm needles. Why that size? I literally just did a little sample, did a little swatch, as he always recommends you do. Did a little swatch and looked at what fabric I liked and what drape I liked. And this is the size that I specifically landed on. I think that in most cases, most knitters tend to be slightly tighter in their knitting than I am. I'm a very loose knitter, so 3mm or even 3.25 may give you a fabric that you really like. So this is all done in the linen in 3 colors. I have multiple colorways available on the website, and you can see with just wearing this around the shoulders that it ends up being a shawl that is very manageable in terms of size. It drops down to virtually your waist level in the back, and then in the front, just worn around the shoulders once like this, it's kind of hip length. Then I had, I've got a wonderful sample knitter who's super sweet, really enthusiastic and wonderful knitter, very lucky, and Gemma. And Gemma knitted the same shawl for me in the original 4-ply yarns. Again, I have kits of these available if you are interested, but the resulting shawl is the big kind of typical Stephen West shawl. So when I put around my shoulders once, it reaches down to my knees. The tips have reached down to my knees virtually, and a lot of people would find that too long. I'm 5'10", I can handle the big size. But if you'd like it a little bit smaller, then consider either going for a linen 3-ply or for my Soliloquy 3-plies. If you like the idea of it being wool rather than linen, then Soliloquy 3-ply has got the same running length as the linen. We're talking 600 meters per 100 grams rather than the typical 400 meters of 4-ply. So, showing this not to bang my own drum because I did not knit this. I'm showing it just to give you an idea of the difference in size. So, here we are, autumn time. Twists and Turns is finished, and I am still on my next project. Haven't finished it yet, and I doubt I'll finish it before the end of the year. I think it'll be January before I cast off. I will put it on this lady next. It's a bit of a, here's one I made earlier, moment. Prepped this one a little bit to try and bulk out the slight shape of my mannequin, because of course I haven't got a very slight shape, as you have seen with the jumpers that I've been demonstrating. Okay, sorry about this, gotta stand up and do this properly. What I've done is I've grabbed a love top in the magenta colorway and put that on underneath my work in progress there. You can see that, of course, the stitches for the sleeves are on stitch holders until I actually knit those sleeves, and the bottom of the jumper is still on needles. I'm still working on this. So this is as far as I've come. What I'm doing with this jumper, I'm combining it with my Yak Blend 2 yarn. It's sitting on the wall there. I'm using the color called Bitter Lime, and I'm knitting the Bitter Lime held together with one strand of another 2-ply yarn by Art Yarns, which is called the Mohair Ombre 2-ply. So the whole jumper has that kind of gradient feel in the colors of the colorway of the cashmere and the mohair ombre. So you start to see the kind of thing that I'm after and the kind of effect that that gives. So the cashmere here has gone through a section of being pink and then coral color, then the light colors with some of the bright and tealy sprinkles in it, and now I'm back into my pinks and into my pinks and my corals here. So I love the fact that the Bitter Lime helps that colorway because it's held together with him, and that by the same token the presence of the Bitter Lime pushes back the intensity of the color changes that are in those main yarns. I hope all of this makes sense. I am now at a point that I normally would lengthen my back a little bit if I wanted to do that. And of course, with this kind of pattern, if I would start short rowing here, that would kind of interrupt my beautiful broken rib. You would see that those short rows, I would not be able to make those completely invisible. So I have a solution for that. Like I already said, I want to make sure that I have enough yarn out of my 2 skeins to knit a sizable jumper. So instead of starting my rib section at the bottom of my jumper, I'm going to leave these stitches. I'm going to put them on a stitch holder, and I'm going to knit my sleeves. I'm going to keep knitting my sleeves until I'm happy with them. They're going to be long, they're going to be cozy and voluminous. The whole thing is going to be a cozy, voluminous jumper, oversized. As you can see, it's wide enough as it is. So same with the sleeves. I'm going to do that, and then on the basis of how much yarn I have left, specifically of the cashmere, I will then decide exactly what I'm going to do and how much of it I'm going to do here at the bottom. Watch this space. In January, at the first episode of January, I'll be back and show you where I'm at with my work in progress. Looking into the future, before we go on to Layercake, my ideas for next projects, well, there's already a Tomomi Yoshimoto jumper on the horizon. I'll show it here. It is called the Drawing Sweater. I absolutely love the look of, it's almost like flowers that float on water. I think it's beautiful, and I'll definitely be knitting that jumper. I haven't quite decided what yarns I'm going to use yet, so about that more later. But the other thing that I'm really keen to do, a couple of years ago, I bought the pattern for the cat vent cowl, and I'll show a photograph of it here. absolutely adore the colorway. It's a wonderful project for using up either an advent yarn calendar, like little mini skeins, or just, you know, leftover yarns. I don't know whether I'm going to do it in linen yet, or whether it's a combination of different fibers, but I really like the pattern. I really like the color combination in the sample itself. So 3 or 4 years after this pattern came out, I'm keen to knit one. Possibly my Christmas project, I don't know. It depends a little bit on how motivated I am to keep going on this one. Or maybe I'll combine the two and alternate them over the Christmas break. We'll see. I'll keep you posted on that. So that was my knitting year in review. I have a project on that has to do with knitting as well, and that I did not knit myself. And it's a really nice project that kind of moves us from knitting into Layercake. So I'll make a separate little section for it. And it is my 2022 Boo Knits collaboration. If you're not familiar with this yet, stay tuned. I'm going to talk about it next. Yes, my Boo Knits collaboration. Bev from Boo Knits is a very enthusiastic Layercake fan, and she immediately said yes when I came up with the idea of asking her to make a contribution to my Synergy knits. This is an idea that I have not been able to give enough attention to yet. Hopefully this coming year will be different, but the idea behind the Layercake Synergy concept is that you buy a Layercake garment that's made out of linen, and then you knit a linen project that you can attach or add to your linen garment to embellish and augment it. So the first Synergy project was the Synergy top, which I'll show a photograph of it here, which is very similar to a step top in the sense that it is longer in the back and shorter in the front. But rather than the sleeves that you see in this step top, it is sent to you without sleeves, and you then have yarn and a pattern to knit the sleeves and to knit a panel to make front and back the same length. So that was the first Synergy top. I then asked Bev from Boo Knits to do something similar. She has designed a knitted section that can be added to an existing sleeve of a Synergy top and added to it. So it is a Synergy top that already has sleeves, and then you knit and attach a lace section to the bottom of that sleeve, making it longer, of course. I've got one sleeve with and one without. This is the sample that Bev made for me. And using that same pattern, that same lace design that she has created, which we've called Candleford, you knit a Candleford panel to attach to the front of your step top. So I'm trying to get up very carefully to show you. I'm wearing the large purple check baggies, and then hopefully you can see the baggies a little bit through the panel still, but with the longer panel in the back of the step top, and then the panel in the knitting. And this is all done with contrasting colors to show you exactly which bit is which. But of course, one of the things that I want to do, and that is on my list of knits to do as well, just not going to start it at Christmas yet, but at some point next year, I am going to create a step top with these sleeve and panel attachment in the same color rather than a contrast color. I think it'll be stunning. I also want to make an adaptation to this pattern to make sure that it can be added to, that this particular lace design can be added to the Synergy tops, so that you end up with a lace sleeve that starts right here at the shoulder rather than underneath or below the sleeve of the step top. So that's a little bit of futuring, but back to where we are now, the Candleford is not just panels to add to a step top, it's also a shawl design. I'm wearing one of the versions, which I will show you now. It was such an important project and last year, and I still don't feel like I've done it proper justice. It was ready just in time to take it to Yarndale with us, and I was struggling at Yarndale to give it the proper attention and communication that I wanted to give it on the stand. But going back to the previous point, this is one of the versions of the shawl where you see that it has a section of stocking stitch and then it has a big lace border. The border, which is the same lace design as the sleeves and the panel on the step top, that same Candleford design, can either be knitted with or without beads. This has got teal beads in to go with my teal step top, but it can be done without beads as well. So there's a version here, and that's the second version of the shawl. So this one with the stocking stitch section can be knitted with or without beads. And then this is the second version, which is an all over lace version. So there's no stocking stitch in this at all. It's just lace with those same points, and in this case knitted without any beads, and that could have beads added to it as well. So both versions, the one with and without the stocking stitch, can be knitted either with or without beads. You get a good idea of the size of the shawl in the lace version, down to about thigh level if you put it around your shoulders once, but plenty big to wind around your shoulders twice. It's a lovely, lovely size. The quality of Bev's patterns is out of the ballpark, and I have kits available with the linen for, have the pattern separately as well, pattern or kit with linen for the shawl, and same pattern or kit with linen for the panels for the step top. So that whole idea of layer cake and knitting somehow merging and finding each other in the middle, where I showed you the project that was right at the start of 2022 of a multicolored Fairly shawl that goes with the large purple check, the baggies that I'm wearing, and then having something like this come back in September with the collaboration with Bev from Boo Knits. I love it. So there'll be more of that coming next year, I promise. Which exact shape it's going to take, I don't know yet. But for now, that was all of my knitting for 2022, and hopefully not as long for the next section. But let's have a look at what happened in Layercake in 2022 as well. So yes, Layercake 2022. I'm going to have to use my cheat sheet a lot here. In January, we started with the new large purple check, the baggies that I'm wearing that I already showed you just now. And I gave you a little bit of a sneak peek behind the scenes in my newsletter with a photograph where I showed you how I create the ghosted images of garments without a body in it on my website. So I'll show the same image again here, where you'll see the ghosted playsuit in the front, and then behind it you see a slightly paler version of that same playsuit with me in it, with a very concentrated face, because I'm trying to stand in a way that no part of my body that isn't playsuit blocks the picture of the playsuit, because I take all the other bits in the photograph except of the playsuit out to create the playsuit ghost. So I shouldn't have any wrinkles of or fingers or any other bits, wrinkles of clothes, I mean, with the top like I'm wearing. Nothing should cover the edges of the play suit. I'm standing still. I try not to slouch or anything, so I'm standing up straight and I'm taking a photograph of myself to then edit all of that out, and then I've got a play suit left to show on the website. So that's how I do all of them. Nothing more professional than that. It all looks like it's been professionally made, but it's just me doing it still. So that was January, large purple check, and before the year was over, I think it was in the summer, we sold out of the large purple check. All that fabric is gone, but we've replaced it with something that I believe is even better. I'm rushing ahead as per usual, so back to the beginning of the year. January, large purple check. February saw the introduction of the love top. So here is a photograph of me in one of the first love tops. This was the, I think it's the charcoal stripe that I'm showing off here. And love top is slightly shorter in the front, slightly longer in the back, and styled in such a way that it goes really well with other layer cakes. It doesn't block your pockets and things like that. So there's thinking behind it. And that's what I try to do with all of the layer cakes, including the next episode after the introduction of the love top in February. There's an episode number 63 where I specifically spent a little bit of time on alterations and modifications of existing layer cakes that you may have at home. If you have any layer cakes that are just not right in terms of fit, have a look at episode 63 and see if there are any alterations or modifications shown in there that could help you change your layer cake into a garment that you love to wear. If that doesn't show you any solutions and you still would like to change something, as always, drop me a line, give me a call or an email, show me the problem, and I will help and work on a solution with you. So next was March, and talk about a review of the year. I wish I would be able to say that the war in Ukraine, with Russia invading Ukraine, was behind us. But as we all know, the war is still ongoing, and it had a massive impact on all of us. We were just scrambling out of 2 years of pandemic, and then this war hit, and it hit a lot closer to home than we all wish for, of course. Nobody ever wishes for war, but this is impacting us all, and it's going to be impacting us for years to come. My initial reaction to the war was like those poor people in Ukraine. So the idea that I came up with, and it was literally just a spur of the moment idea, was to create a promotion where the profit of all yellow and blue, color of the Ukraine flag, of course, yellow and blue layer cake garments, any of those sold in the month of March would be donated to charity. Here's a quick picture of the shop window that I did, studio window that I created for that. And I think it was really well received. And I also shared some of our struggles with a new skirt design that I was working on. What we do when we design layer cake is set the bar very high for the goals that we want to achieve. I would like layer cakes to work and suit on as many different bodies as possible. So that means people who are shorter than the average person, people who are of average height and build, people who are above average height and build. And with average, I mean both height as well as size. And of course, somebody of a small size who's very tall has got very different proportions to somebody who is of a large size and very short, for example. So proportions are wildly different for the layer cakes that we create. And being the tiniest label in the universe, as I always say, the smallest brand that I've ever encountered, we then have the challenge of making garments in multiple lengths and in multiple sizes, and closing and fitting in a way that they look good on all those wildly different proportioned bodies. And to create a skirt that works in that way was the biggest challenge yet. So I share some of those skirt design woes in episode 65 of the podcast if you're interested. And that was all going on behind the scenes, but because by April time we were ready to introduce, talking about different sizes again, a new length of dresses. We have a regular length and a long length, and we were keen to introduce a petite length of dress. So the regular length dress would not end up being almost ankle length on shorter frames. So we now have our dresses in 3 lengths: petite, medium or regular, and long, as well as the 4 different sizes. So we introduced our petite dresses, and we also introduced 2 lovely new colors for the summer, raspberry and cherry, showing a photograph here again of the 2 colors and of that difference in length between the petite and the regular length dress. Then, where were we next? This was April, so of course at the back end of April we went to Wonderwool in Wales, and I'll show you some stand photographs here. Of course all the yarns and garments are all shown together, worn together, styled together exactly as we like them to, and that is still something that I really enjoy with the shows, to be able to style up those garments with the hand knitted and hand crocheted garments to go with it, and shawls and accessories, etc. And as such, going forward, we won't get back on the show trail the way we used to, with like 7 or 8 shows a year, because one of the things that I learned during the pandemic is that we, just being so small and just me doing everything, with Andrea helping with shows and producing Layercake, do not have enough time left when we do that many shows to create new garments and to work on new designs. So moving forward, at the moment, I think 2023 will definitely be back at Wonderwool. We'll also go back, if they'll have us, to Yarndale. Wonderwool is in Wales, Yarndale in April. Yarndale is in Skipton up north, Yorkshire in September. So that gives us 2 shows at very different parts of the country, and hopefully gives people who are really keen to come and see us at a show an opportunity to make the trek and see us there. We also still receive visitors here at the studio, always by appointment, and if you make an appointment to come to the studio, I give you all the time you need in order to try different things on, look at yarns, whatever you come for. There's never any pressure to buy, and you will never be interrupted by other customers, because it's just you visiting and having the studio to yourself effectively. So that is something that we're still doing and that we'll keep doing going forward, apart from doing those 2 shows again next year. So that was Wonderwool. Meanwhile, time was moving on, and we're moving from April into May, and I introduced 3 new play suits in summer weight linen. These were all stripy play suits. Here's a picture of all 3 of them. 3 birds: magpie, starling and kingfisher stripes for the summer play suits. They were very well received, and a lot more people now understand the difference in the weights between our linen. We have 2 different weights. What we call the summer weight, or the lighter weight, is what in the industry is still seen as a relatively heavy weight. It's a medium weight linen, And most linen suppliers and linen garment manufacturers would never go beyond what is our lighter weight. But for tunics and for some of the dresses, we also introduce, and the trousers, for example, our staple linen is a heavier weight linen than average, and it makes the garments heavier, and it, for example, would make it unsuitable to try and make longer dusters out of the heavier linen, because the whole thing will just become too weighty and too heavy. So we play around with those two weights and we combine them in different ways, and I'm working on a way to show on the website exactly which linen for which garment is which weight. So some people really want to know that level of detail, so I will add that detail at some point when I get around to it. Meanwhile, when you're in doubt, of course, give me a shout and ask. So summer linen play suits, followed by something very new for us this past year, and they'll never go away because they've been so popular. The first Layercake cocoons. These are the first Layercakes that are not actually produced here at the studio by Andrea, and that is because they are made out of a stretchy jersey fabric, and stretch jersey should better be made on machines that are suitable to sew in a way that you end up with stretchy seams. So I found, with help, a very small a factory in North London that in very small quantities can make our jersey Layercakes for us. And what we introduced in May of this year was baggies in the jersey, as well as a jersey version of the love top. Some contrasting colors and some complementary colors. The slate that I'm showing here comes with the coordinating baggies, and then there were no less than 5 other colorways for the tops, because people had been asking me for years where they could find nice fitted tops to wear underneath their Layercakes. And it wouldn't be a Layercake top if it didn't come with something unique. The sleeves of the love tops are cut onto the body of the top itself, so there are no shoulder seams. Instead, you'll have a seam over the top of your arm and underneath. So it's a dolman sleeve that is cut onto the top. That allows you to successfully wear those tops in multiple sizes. In June, we then finally were ready to introduce our new skirt shape, and it had become a wrap skirt. The wrap skirt allows lots of accommodation of lots of different waist sizes, and the wrap section being wide creates almost an obi belt type strong waistband that can be worn at different heights on the body. So as a result, the skirt is suitable for lots of different body shapes and lots of different waist size and shapes. So that was the wrap skirt. I then thought, oh my gosh, we're heading into summer. I was going to go on holiday for a week in France, and the first thing I thought of packing was my summer weight duster. I thought, oh my gosh, if I do that, you might do that, or you may want to do that, but you can't if you haven't got one. So it was a last minute decision to offer some summer weight dusters in stripy fabrics in June and get them out to you in time for your holidays. The other idea behind the choices of the colors was that they also go extremely well with the stripy play suits that we had just introduced 2 months earlier. Then we were into holiday time. So there's actually, if you're ever interested in hints and tips about choosing your Layercake wardrobe to take on holiday, have a look at episode 72, hints and tips about holiday packing and how can you ensure that you can travel with a small suitcase, and when you're at the destination on the other side, people are amazed at the number of different outfits you can create out of a handful of garments. Episode 72 for that one. Then we were into July, and I ended up thinning out our stocks with only 2 shows a year. We don't have to hold quite that much of ready-made stock at the studio. So I put on a sale of Layercake classics. Again, showing you a photograph of an example. I'm wearing the purple overalls there in a large size. I love wearing the purple overalls oversized because it creates lots of opportunities of wearing it with different tops and bigger tops, etc. And just like with other oversized layer cakes, you just put it on and you can forget about your body for the rest of the day. And with the OVs, it's a really nice snuggly outfit somehow. As you can see a little bit in the picture. So that was our Layercakes Classics sale to thin out the stocks at the studio. Then in August was a brand new garment, the Layercake wrap dress. Following on from the wrap skirt, I'd been wanting to do a wrap dress for ages, and here it finally was. Andrea will curse me forever because they are an absolute pig to make. They have 4.5 meters of fabric in them. So imagine doing all the gathering at the empire line of the dress, and it being a wrap dress, it goes 1.5 times around your body. So it's not just an empire line that is slightly bigger than a waistline. No, it is, more than a meter and a half of empire line that all needs to have gathered fabric on it. So may come up with a wrap dress that's a little bit less laborious next year. Hopefully, fingers crossed, if we can manage to fit it in. I definitely will, because I would like another wrap dress. Not another wrap dress, I would like another gathered dress, is what I should call it. We'll see. Anyway, that was the wrap dress. And the combination I'm showing there is still my favorite combination of having a play suit and a wrap dress worn together in the same fabric. So in this case, I'm wearing the magpie stripe play suit with the magpie stripe wrap dress. And the way I've actually tied the wrap dress there is also my favorite way of tying the wrap dress. I don't close it all together and wear it by itself as a dress, but I close it asymmetrically. I love the effect that you then get at the bottom of the front panel, and I wear it loosely over the top of my play suit. It's a really nice combination to wear it like that in between seasons. So you've got a sleeveless garment underneath and then a garment with sleeves over the top. And of course, as it gets colder, you can put one of the cocoon tops in between. And am I there yet? No, I'm not at cocoons. More cocoons coming in a minute. But before I get to that, there was another bunch of new colors of dresses coming through. And this was at the back end of August. Here's a photograph showing you the 2 different dresses, tulip and love dress, all available in 4 new colors that we did. Combination of the heavier linen and the lighter linen at the back end of summer or early September. Then in September, I thought I have to start thinking about people who plan their holiday outfits, holiday as end of the year holiday, further in advance. So rather than leaving it really late until October, November, I introduced a sparkly version of the linen love top. I'm showing it to you here, worn underneath one of the dresses that we had just introduced a month before. So that is a sage love dress with the sparkly love top worn underneath. And that was one of those things that I kind of stumbled across, where I'm always talking about wearing love tops underneath layer cakes, but by wearing a love top underneath a love dress and then folding over the cuffs. That in itself was nothing new, but doing that with a sparkly top is a great solution to add a little bit of pizzazz, a little bit of bling to an outfit without going all out sparkly. So I thought it was a very clever one myself at the time. So that was the Sparkle Love Top, and of course I also again made available the sparkle shawls to go with it. So you can then combine that with lots of other layer cakes and have a sparkly linen shawl to go with your Sparkle Love Top. Then September we were talking about, and of course September brought our second show of the year, Yarndale. I'm going to show you some of the photographs from Yarndale now. And that also coincided with the introduction of our spicy layer cakes. And my goodness, did those go down a storm. I had the spicy colors woven for me and taken receipt of that earlier in the year already. And as soon as those colors came in, I thought, you know what? I need to wait with introducing them until autumn. Autumn is the perfect time of year for these colors. A really nice warm turmeric, a beautiful soft orange saffron color, and what I'm still crazy about myself, even though I ended up with no garment in it because it all sold out, mixed spice. So before the pre-order had even finished of the spice colors, we started selling out of that fabric. Great, that's exactly what I hoped to achieve. It was meant to be a one-off, not to add even more colors to our basic color range, but to have a seasonal select number of colors just for that time of year, and that's how it's worked. So finally, I was alluding to it, but the second installment of Cocoons. Now, the top that I'm wearing was actually a color that would not have been there normally. The idea that I had was to add to the slate colored baggies and the slate colored love top two other basic colors, being black and navy, and then have that together with the slate as three base colors for the baggies, and then make long sleeve tops in those same three base colors, slate, black and navy. My supplier of fabric really let me down. I think it was in part not his fault, in part I think it was bad management on his part. And the result was that there was enough slate jersey to make the baggies when my production slot at the factory came up, but there was not enough fabric to make the anytime top in slate. So I chose a different grey. What else could I do? I had no other option other than to forgo that part of the production, which I didn't want to do. And sometimes we managed to make lemonade out of lemons, and boy, did that work with this alternative grey color. Because, of course, it did mean that I don't have coordinated anytime top with baggies cocoon sets with the long sleeves, but I ended up with a color of anytime tops that I absolutely adore. And going back to the point of wearing the play suit together with the wrap dress and needing an extra layer in between, of course an anytime top is a perfect layer in between because it gives you long sleeves and you can wear it underneath your play suit and then still have that long line of play suit with wrap dress over the top showing. This color, this grey color, I have found out that by now that no matter what your complexion is, whether you're into warmer colors or cooler colors, this color actually suits any complexion. It is a beautiful base color to work with. So hopefully, and maybe some coordinated baggies maybe next spring. What do you think? Let me know. In a lighter color going into a summer. But at least we have these anytime tops for now. I think they have been very warmly received. I've just done the offer to newsletter subscribers, special offer of cocoon sets which went down a storm as well. So running a little bit ahead there because there were 2 other things that we did with Layercake this year in between. November saw the introduction of coordinated wool sets, palazzos in our lovely wool colors, and then with short dusters to go with them. Here's a photograph of me in the winter white wool palazzos together with a duster, and I'm wearing it with one of the white linen shirts. You can see there that the white of the linen is slightly lighter than the winter white of the wool, but they're quite close. They go together very nicely. But apart from that, we also had the ink chalk stripe, the really dark blue ink chalk stripe, and the blue marl window pane wool, which have sold out completely. We've got some of the winter white left if you're interested, but apart from ready-made garments in the blue marl window pane and in the ink chalk stripe, what we have left there is just the stock that we made. And then last but not least, of course, here it finally was, a new large check. And I just received a message from one of our customers who got her large bright check smock in the mail and said, oh my gosh, you're right, you can actually wear this color with any color Layercake. I had so many people ask me, well, what colors of Layercakes go best with this large bright check? And the answer is all of the above. It sounds crazy, but it's actually true. There is no Layercake here in the studio that does not go with the large bright check, and that's exactly what I had hoped for. We never quite know whether we're going to get it because, of course, you design these things on paper, and how the colors actually combine when they're woven together is sometimes a proper surprise, and boy was it a pleasant surprise in the large bright check. I ordered lots of that fabric, so we have not sold out of that yet, but we might, although I think it may be one for the repeats, like we've done in the small check that we still sell. That has been repeated once or twice already, still a very popular colorway, and maybe the large bright check will turn into a Layercake classic as well. I guess this coming year is going to teach us more about that. We'll have to wait and see. But that was the Layercake year in review. I have the feeling that this episode is going to end up being unbelievably long. So I may have to put in a disclaimer at the start and warning that you may have to watch it in installments. For those of you who can't have their Layercake or slow wardrobe podcasts long enough, I hope you've enjoyed this review. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you again into the new year. I hope you'll have a great rest of December. I hope you can rest and recuperate if that's what you need, and that you'll all be able to hug and spend time with your loved ones. And I'll see you at the other end. See you again soon.